Hi there, welcome to this build of a 48-inch wingspan Tomboy Senior. Now this is a classic design that was reworked by David Boddington in about 2008 when it appeared in Model Flying. Now hopefully you've seen the first video where we discussed the build and I created the components necessary, which I've got laid out here, to build not only the tailplane but also the wings. Now in this video I'm going to be building the main wings, which are the two sides, the central section, and then hopefully, time permitting, I'm going to be joining those together, all three components together. And that's going to be interesting because we've got a 4-inch lift at each wing tip to create a really big dihedral. But the thing that's on our side to get this done in this video is that there's no wing locking mechanisms. It's simply going to be held to the fuselage with elastic bands and dowels. And there's no ailerons. This is going to be for two channel, just the rudder and the elevator. So we haven't got the ailerons to worry about. As I said in the last video, we got all of the ribs prepared, we got the spars, the leading edge, the trailing edge done, with all of the slots necessary for the ribs to fit into. Now I'm going to set this out on the building board and then we'll get it glued together. I think the first thing I'm going to do is build the central section, so I'll set that up now. Actually, I've just realised there's one final thing I need to do before I can start laying it out and building, and that is in relation to the sheeting on the top of this central section here and on the start of the wing. Now this is going to be sheeted with 1/16 balsa, and so the ribs that is going to sit onto I need to reduce by 1/16. So I've got the two 1/8 ribs that make up the very central section, and then I've got two ribs on either wing that will need to be done. So I've got 6 ribs in total. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I've got these 6 ribs that I need to reduce the height on that top edge by 1/16 of an inch. And it's a really easy thing to do, and I will show you how I'm going to do that now, and then I'll set it out. Well, this is my 3mm plywood template that I made to cut the ribs out, and these are the ribs I've got for the central section and then the 2 ribs either side at the start of the wing. And all of these need to be reduced in height by 1/16 for the sheeting. Now I've got some scrap 1/16 balsa here, and I'm just going to use the plywood rib as a template, and I'm going to use this scrap balsa as a measure to just put the rib 1/16 down from the top of the rib. So there, use that as a measure. Now this plywood rib is 1/16 down from the top of that balsa rib underneath, and we can see by running this piece of 1/16 balsa around the side there now. And all I'm going to do is take a scalpel, hold it nice and upright, and run that around, and that will take off my 1/16. And I just need to do that with all 4 ribs. You can see that's come off easy, really nice, and consistent thickness. The only time is the time it takes to actually set this up, measure it, and we need to make sure that this gap is just right. I'm going to be building on my balsa board, which is lovely and flat, but let's not trust it, so I use a good straight edge to make sure that is flat, because the last thing we want to do is start building on something that's shaped like a banana. I've got some polythene which is covering the board so I don't stick the balsa I'm building with onto the board. Now, this is just polythene, but I often use the backing of covering film, which is really good and really worth saving. Now I've got weights either end, I think those are just in camera, and one here, just to hold everything nice and solid. And I'm going to be pinning down first the trailing edge, and I will just zoom in at why we do that. So I've got the trailing edge with my notches cut in. First thing I'm going to do is just get that pinned down. I always quite like having the spars and the trailing edges a little bit longer than necessary, so that there's plenty to stick some big pins into to hold it nice and solid. I've then got my ribs, the two 1/8 ribs that are going to go into that. There's only 2 ribs in this central section, and I've got my plywood dihedral brace, and I've got the leading edge, and I think this is the right piece, yep, and that is the spar. Now the spar goes in, then we have let's put the dihedral brace in first, and then turn that over, and then we can put in the spar. It's a nice tight fit, and if I just mock this up first, and then I will start to glue it. And the first thing I will glue is actually this spar here to the brace, and then I will actually put the ribs on. Just want to check everything looks right, and as I'm building I'll be using my blocks to hold the ribs square. I will be using my set square, which, oh there it is, I'll be using my set square as well, just to make sure that these ribs angles are nice and square with this back trailing edge, and that looks good. And finally, I want to make sure that so that's 61.5 mil. 61.5 mil. So that's nice, that's looking good. So I'm going to take this apart now, and I'm going to glue that spar onto there. I'm going to be doing all of this with CA, but initially this spar onto the dihedral brace I will be using, I think I lost the hole in the end of my epoxy, I'll be using medium CA just to glue that onto there. So I'll get on and do this now once I've unblocked my CA. There we go. Right, well that was fairly easy now. We've got that central portion finished for now anyway. Still a little bit left to do on it. The sheeting will fit on there nicely now we've lowered those ribs. We can just see that fits in, and the same on the trailing edge there. Still need to profile this trailing edge. Tempted to do it now with a plane, but I'll have a think about that. I might do it just before I join the wings together, and obviously the front needs profiling, but that can be set aside now. And the next thing to do is I'm going to build the right hand wing, so I'll lay that out and get on with it now. Right, well, I'm going to be building this and setting it out in exactly the same way as I did for the central section. And I'm not going to be building it on top of the plans, because there's no benefit from doing that. In fact, the variation in the plans may cause a distraction. And after all, we've got the slots in the trailing edge which we've now cut. We've measured accurately and we've cut them, and we can't alter that spacing now even if we wanted. We've got the two closer here for the root of the wing. We've got the wing ribs all created identical, which will set the chord, so we can't alter that. And as long as everything is square, and I'll be using my blocks to help me, as long as everything's square, then it'll come out a nice wing, and having it, as I said, on the plans won't add anything to it. So I will get on now and lay this out, and then we'll get it glued. Right, I've now got this set out, and it's a really easy process. There's nothing to this wing, but there's a few important things that we need to just be mindful of. And the first thing is, when we put down this trailing edge, not only to pin it at the ends, but to use a straight edge to make sure that it is perfectly straight, and to put some pins in along its length. These are finer pins, to make sure we don't end up with it bowing down a little bit. Once we've got that fixed, everything else is measured off that trailing edge. So we've got the wing ribs that have gone on, and they set the distance for the spar, this central spar. And again, they set the ribs set the distance for the leading edge. Now, one of the beauties of having bird mouths along the front is you can eye them up from the end, and you can see that they're all in a lovely straight line. Really nice. Now, I've been down and I've checked these are all square to this back edge. What I will do now is I will go along and I will check they're all vertical, and I will put a block either side. I will check it's square and I'll glue it in place. Then I'll go to the next one and do then the next one, and I'll work my way along, get the leading edge in the bird mouth, and then we'll be almost done. One thing to note is that this root rib here, which goes against this central section, when we join the wings to that central section, this will need to be angled over quite a lot to cope with the dihedral. But we'll deal with that when we come to it. I'm going to leave this root rib here unglued for now. These are the two reduced height ribs that will take the sheeting that we talked about earlier. So I'm going to get this glued now, and then we'll see how it looks. Right, I've now got this off the building board, and it's looking lovely and straight. It's always nice to get them unpinned and just eye it up and check it's all straight. Interestingly, a 4-inch dihedral, which this is going to have at the terminal end, is like that. Hopefully you can see that, and with the other wing coming up, it's going to be quite significant. But then it is a classic design with no ailerons, so it's kind of what we need really. Now I'm going to set out and get the left hand wing built now, and I've sorted out some really nice soft 3/8 balsa, which I'm going to put the end of the wing on and cut out a piece, because that needs to go on the end just to give it a bit of strength and a bit of profiling. So that's on the terminal end of the wing. Once I've done that and I've got the other wing built, we'll have a look at setting it up and how we're going to join these wings together. Okay, well, I've now got both wing skeletons completed, and I cut some really soft balsa, which is to go on the end, which I spoke about earlier, but I decided not to stick that on yet, and I'll tell you why. This trailing edge here needs to be planed down to almost a, well, actually to a point, looking at the plans. And once I get that piece of balsa on the end, it's going to be harder to plane that because of the cross grain. So far better that I put it on my bench now and start planing it. And I'm going to use my David plane with a lovely sharp blade. And if you want to see a review of the David plane I've done, have a look in the description below and there will be a link. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put this on the edge of the bench, and I've got my weights that will just stop it sliding. And right, what I'm going to do now is just very gently run the plane down and take off nice smooth slices, and you can see it just comes off really nice and steady. Right, and I've got both of these now planed down on the trailing edge so it's the right shape. I did think when I was planing it I should make the point that actually you're better off using trailing edge stock for this if you've got it. I haven't, it's not something I ever buy, I always make my own, plane my own, but if you've got it then it's probably the easier option, not the cheapest option, but it's the easier option. So just thought I should make that point really, you know, you don't have to go through all of this. Well, both these wings and the central section are now finished, and if we have a closer look, well, these have now got the wing tips on, this 3/8 balsa, and this is lovely soft balsa, and it's been profiled to fit the rest of the wing. The trailing edge here is nicely profiled as well. As I said earlier, if you've got triangular stock, that's definitely a better option, I guess, but, or sorry, not triangular stock, trailing edge stock, then that's a better option, and certainly easier to do. But as I said, it's not something that I'd got, so it's quite easy to make your own if you really need to, like me. Now, the only thing I've done to these wings that isn't shown on the plans is just these little corner sections here at the wing tip, and I've done that on both wings, and that just gives it a little bit more rigidity, and if it comes down, strikes the wingtip, hopefully that will provide a little bit more strength. On the back of this 1/4 inch stock here for the leading edge, I put just a little bit of a flat, just so that that fitted in better. So these are now looking really good, and the next step is to actually join the wings together. Well, as I said earlier, I was hoping to get the wings joined together and setting the dihedral out in this video, but I think time's got on and I don't want to make these videos too long, so I'm going to draw it to a close now, and that will give us much more time in the next video to set these up properly and make sure that dihedral is correct and they're glued together nice and square, because if it's something that needs to be set up precisely, because if we get it wrong, it's not an easy fix. So anyway, I hope you found this interesting and useful, and please come back and see how we get on in the next video, where we'll join the wings, get the dihedral right, and finish off the sheeting. So the wings after that next video will be completely finished, bar a little bit of profiling on the leading edge and some final sanding. So thanks very much for watching.